From somewhere in the forest, a woodpecker tapped out what was nearly a miniature beating to arms. From my lake, a swan took flight like an angel, briefly circling her domain, before landing with huge, bent, muddy white wings near the reeds, where her cygnets instinctively hid themselves when deprived of her protection. Where would my cygnets hide when I could no longer protect them? Cries of joy or frustration echoed from the darkening croquet lawn. The young man I had met in Paris, Mr. Wordsworth, had now become a highly respected poet, and his recent ode on intimations of mortality had moved me profoundly, entering my mind so often at certain times that I could not distinguish its thoughts from my own. I had not memorized it, so my own thoughts had probably become entangled with those of Mr. Wordsworth. Had a glory indeed passed away from the earth, for example? Now, while the birds sang a joyous song, while young lambs bounded in distant fields, did there too exist an incongruous thought of grief? I could hear the cries that creatures made to each other. Did I hear the heavens laugh with them in their jubilee? And was my heart truly attendant at their festival? Did I feel the fullness of their bliss? Did I feel it all? But there was indeed a tree, of many, one, and a single field which I had looked upon, and both of them did speak of something that was now gone. Flowers did seem to ask me where the visionary gleam had fled. Where was the glory in the dream now? Is our birth truly but a sleep and a vast forgetting? Has our soul, our life's star, had its setting elsewhere? Does it really come from a place so distant, yet not an entire forgetfulness, nor an utter nakedness, but trailing shrouds of glory from a God who made for us this home? Heaven never lay about me in my infancy, but were shades of the prison house even now beginning to close upon those two growing boys? Will they behold the light, and whence it flows, seeing it as I was now seeing, in pure joy? At length, would they perceive it slowly die, and fade into the light of common day? Would we all lose ourselves in the indifferent world and its woes? When would it be, if ever, these chains were thrown off? If so, then, with new joy and pride, all the little actors would learn another part to fill their empty stage. Is it vanity to draw down a new wonder from the violet air? Does our exterior semblance belie the soul's immensity? I thought then of the best philosopher who yet kept his heritage, his misted eyes among the blind, so that deaf and silent as the universe, he could now perhaps read the eternal deep, haunted forever by that ever-turning mind.
He's thinking of his father, who's completely insane by now.
Was this now my poor naked father's sole task in life? Would he, pelted by his pitiless storm, be one to whom the grave is but an empty bed? Without the senses or sights of lonely day, or the warm lesser light, will his tomb transform into a place of highest thoughts, which confer pure bliss as he sleeps awake through age after age in a peaceful, enigmatic waiting? Would grey custom lie upon dear Amelia, with a delicate weight of glacial frost, no deeper than her brief and shallow life? Or was there joy in knowing that in our dying embers exists something which ever lives, something that nature still remembers, something that has been so fugitive, so elusive, we have chased it vainly to the end? Is delight and liberty merely the simplistic creed of childhood? Is it in fact not for such ideals that I raise any song of thanks and praise? That I sing instead for those obstinate questionings of sense and outward things, the fallings from us, the dust and vanishings, those blank misgivings of a creature moving about in worlds not ever truly seen or realized? Or is it for higher instincts instilled before birth, before a world, at which our mortal nature trembles like a guilty thing surprised? Or is it for those first dear thoughts, those most shadowy of all recollections, which, be they what they may, are yet the fountainhead of all our few or many days, a master light of all our sleepless visions? I know I wanted all this to uphold us, cherish and make the power to make our noisy years seem but moments in the immense being of an eternal silence. Truths that wake, truths that cannot perish, truths that neither listlessness, nor foolish mad endeavours, nor man, nor girl, nor all that is at enmity with joy can utterly abolish. These are the truths I shall always sing. Could it thus be that, in a season of calm weather, seated not so far inland, our souls still sensed an immortal sea, the one which brought us wailing into life, and that place too whence we can at will, in any moment of our lives, travel without time, seeing all those lost children sport upon the beach or lawn, and hearing the mighty waters rolling on unfathomed, measureless, forevermore. I now thought, sing, birds, exquisite birds, sing, sing out your joyous song, and yet the young lambs dance to the woodpecker's potent new tattoo. We in thought will join with all whose dance is also play, a game, all whose hearts now beat when gladness glows at the blissful new eternity of each day, even if the once blinding lesser light grows ever dimmer to our greater vision. Though nothing can bring back those hours of sheer splendor in the fructifying grass, of heaven in a tiny flower, we will not grieve, but rather find an enduring strength in what remains behind, in fragments of the primal sympathy which having been must thence ever be, or in the holy thoughts that so incongruously emerge from human suffering, and in the faith that looks straight through death. Such strength is needed in those years that bring the mind to mystery's throne, and thus the self to its own immortal history. In my heart, deeply real, I felt divine might in nature. I felt the sublime contours of its creator's hand. I felt the healing breath of life issuing forth from love. I loved the brooks which down their twisting channels gushed deeper now than when I stepped across such streams as lightly as they flowed. I loved the gentle creatures, invisibly scuttling, making tiny homes within this vast common home of nature. I loved this architect of all, saying, by their works shall ye know them, and then knowing myself truly as one facet of the greatest work, this ever-changing nature, this most wondrous of worlds, and then the starry dome of which it too is but a seed-like fleck. And then the seamless eternity of space, all one, isolated in a unity that is perhaps without any form of end. We are both shimmering as stars in the sparkle in a stream. We are the monarchs of an infinite space bounded in a frail shell of time. I loved what I saw around me because it really dwelt inside me, existing by the senses alone. The mind is thus greater than what it sees, for it creates what it sees with sensory paints and clay, with perfumes, tastes, and textures. Who or where are we when no senses feed the mind? We are then everyone, everything, and everywhere. For creator and creation are inseparably one. The innocent brightness of a fading day was surpassingly lovely to me then. The great cupola above now took on a subtler shading from those creating eyes that had kept watch over earth's endless changes and man's unchanging mortality. Another race had taken place, I thought, and another laurel crowns are won, thanks to the human heart by which alone we live, for its compassion, tenderness, unnumbered joys, and even its instructive fears. To me, then, the tiniest flower that grew could give birth to thoughts that often lay too deep for tears. My journal thus ends here with a thought unfinished, or so I feel. There is, I suspect, dear reader, an eighth night of creation. The magnum opus is not yet complete. Like many sublime works of mystic architecture, all of which are, perhaps, symbolic representations of the same mysterious truth. This day, this timeless now, will always be the eighth day, or its night, until we, ourselves, each one, completes the sacred task through deep inner contemplation of an eternal heart, until we see and finally understand what the architect intends each of us to add for his masterpiece to be complete. Reading one's thoughts in an old notebook is not always an embarrassment, since as one prepares for the great return home, many things once hidden are subtly revealed. Even lies but merely become, as Gulliver learned from his philosophers, the things that are not true. The darkness is indeed, as Fred Weatherall learned, simply an absence of light. In poetry and art we find the hidden things revealed in symbols and metaphors, devices that get as close to the ultimate truth as the reader and its words can go without bursting into flames. Who experiences the experiencer? The jewel is in the heart of the lotus. My own words scared me when I read them, because they were not my own words. I had no recollection of thinking or writing them, but I knew they were true. I remembered only the tranquil beauties of a waning summer's afternoon, and the clack of croquet balls and mallets. If there were any doubts about the authorship of these thoughts, some of which even allude to secrets, I would never attempt to set them in words. One only has to turn the page to read a few dozen lines I wrote on the theme of suggestions for improving economy and efficiency in kitchens and pantries. This had no perceivable connection with the completion of creation, although every hair is numbered, an easy task in my case, every act recorded, and life always unfinished, life itself always unfinished, even at the end. The enchanting reverie or meditation, for what else can I term it, in fact left me in puzzling tears, which I assumed were for my father in his windowless mad cell, for my sister in her cold stone grave, yet also for the joy of watching a mother lost in play with her two darling sons, creations of her flesh, but still a bitter-sweet delight, which would soon be blown away, scattered like the fading gold of autumn leaves in a raucous wind. Love then seemed more fragile than the dry russet leaf I watched thrust suddenly from its only home, its only world in life, to float erratically through cooling air down to a damp graveyard, whence other trees would some day spring up in rich earth, bearing fresh verdant buds eager to unfold as fluttering green wings. All nature then seemed but food for an insatiable maw, feeders becoming food for new feeders whose end would be as yet more food. Even we were turned into food by death, correctly pictured with a scythe, since he was more farmer than a welcome angel. Love surely could not endure such harshness as all the rest of life suffered, yet it did. Love, the only goal for which every man, king or homeless beggar yearned, found itself treated and sent the same way as all other things. Was life, in fact, really worth the trouble of living it? As George had so cruelly said, did I truly not belong here? Was I to be a mere onlooker of life, the one who never joins in? I have never been easy in company, feeling more alone in crowds than I do when walking alone through twilit woods with my dog. I watched Julie's effortless way of communicating with anyone, as if partially melding with them, and then I felt my awkward self, as if in a case or surrounded by an invisible wall. Talking to strangers, my voice sounds hollow, false, inauthentic. I become so self-conscious, I begin to wonder if I am the person having awkward conversations, or merely the one observing him. Even Wetherall, the only man with whom I can truly talk so freely, confesses he has never himself experienced my kind of social incompetence. I resort to graceful manners and stilted etiquette to hide my alienation, just as I use the army's rules and regulations to avoid genuine interactions. I cannot reach out to others, yet I am grateful when they reach out to me. I like people, all kinds of people, but I have no idea how to start a real conversation with them. Frequently, too, they are shy, intimidated by my royal position. Or else they assume I am aloof, pompous, too grand for them. I dearly wished I could relax and banter like Julie, but although I have studied her for years, I still cannot master the trick. I have even practiced before mirrors, chattering freely and laughing naturally, but I merely look and sound like a talentless actor. So, amongst strangers, my shell of piety, solemnity, and stiff formality has always been viewed as my most real character. There are a few, of course, who really know me. Let me in, please. I want to shout at the rest. The sentiment reaches back beyond memory. It permeates my childhood, but has only recently begun to subside, although most of my own family still won't let me in, and my poor father has now permanently locked out everyone he ever knew, even himself, I suspect, often wondering who or what is left inside. Can death exist within life? Can the self escape its corporeal cage before being freed by destruction and decay? My father's body lived on, yet with no one I knew inside it. Someone I knew once came and went as if his body were a room to be entered or exited at will. But one day that someone never returned, leaving his room empty of all but appearance of life, a pod without peas, a mask with no face behind it. I first knew this when I found no love within myself, the husk left in his prison cell. No fear either. The man who had dominated my life had simply vanished, taking all of my confused emotions with him, but leaving no closure for them behind. It was a last and perplexing, vexing abandonment, and eternal silence now replying to every entreaty I might make in any letter I would never write to him again. As I watched the family I could have had, with their smiles, cries, and clacking mallets in the mossy carpet of lawn, I asked someone, not myself, not God, if there was a reason why I was born of everything, yet allowed to possess nothing of any value to me. The angelic swan flew up again, now beating heavy circles above my craning head, before landing forcefully back on sequined waters, near the wavering, shadowy reeds. As I did this, croquet mallets were thrown down, and Julie, arms around her boys, retreated from the incipient evening's encroaching chill into our house, where tea was being served. I lay a while longer, watching tangerine striations form low in the western horizon, and the first star appear like a luminous eye above me, peering through a mottled deep blue dome. Then I too walked slowly to the lodge, wishing those vanished hours of anguish, splendor in the grass could have continued on forever.